That's right, it's just a drinks machine at the back. It's all right. There it is.
Okay, right, we'll start. Right, good evening everybody, and welcome to tonight's Development Control Committee meeting on Wednesday 10th of April. This will be the last Development Control Committee meeting of the municipal year. Just a few housekeeping points to start off with. Fire evacuation procedures. In the event that you hear a fire alarm, there are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. So if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately by the nearest viable exit. There's a fire exit in the public gallery and two fire exits behind me. We will meet in the War Memorial Park as our muster point in the unlikely event that the fire alarm does go off. Webcast of meetings. So this meeting is being webcast live on the internet and will be available to view on YouTube after the meeting. And a brief request on all those present who've got mobile phones, if you could have them either switched off or turned to silent, that would be very much appreciated. So a few words on the business before us tonight, and then we'll start. Explanation of activities. So Development Control is a quasi-judicial committee made up of councillors of all parties and groupings acting in an apolitical capacity. The decisions to be made tonight will be based on planning law, citing policies in the Basingstoke and Dean local plan, the National Planning Policy Framework and local neighbourhood plans. Seated to my left are planning officers who will be offering their expertise on the applications before us tonight. To my right is the legal officer to make sure everything's above board and legal, and my vice chair. And on the benches in front of you are the councillors who will be making the decisions tonight. For each application under consideration, we'll first have an introduction by the relevant planning officer. We'll then hear from parish councils where they've elected to speak on an item, those speaking against, those in favour, and visiting ward councillors. Each party will have 4 minutes each. We'll then have questions for the planning officers, if there are any, because councillors may have already asked questions in advance of the meeting. And we've also had a viewing panel where we went to 3 of the applications Friday last week. Finally, the councillors will debate each item before moving to vote, and then we'll have the decision recorded. So without further ado, we'll commence tonight's business. Apologies for absence. Councillor Goddison, any other apologies? And Councillor Hussey, okay, did we have any apologies? Okay.
Substitute.
And substitution, welcome Councillor Phillimore, substituting Councillor Howard Savell. Next item of business, declarations of interest. Do I have any? Councillor Bound?
I'll be absenting myself from item 3 because I could be seen to be compromised.
Thank you for the notification, duly noted. Next item of business, urgent matters. Do we have any? Not been informed of any. Okay, excellent. Next up, minutes of the meeting held 6th of March. If we can go through these for accuracy. Do we have a mover? Councillor Court, seconder, Councillor Robinson. All agreed? Excellent. Right, I shall sign those off shortly. Right, and now for the main item of business, which is the planning applications that are before us tonight. And the first item up on page 53 of the order papers, if you have them with you. So the first item up is 25 Heath End Road, Borghurst. And if we could have Lisa, if you could introduce, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full application for the erection of a new building comprising of a mixed use, sui generis and residential use. A sui generis is a use that falls outside any of those uses set out within the use classes order and could be a broad spectrum. No specified use has been set out within the submission. The site falls within the detailed emergency planning zone in respect of the AWE Aldermaston site. This application was deferred by members of the committee at its meeting in October 2023 for clarification to be sought on the population sector within the DEPZ and reconsultation with the emergency planning teams and Office for Nuclear Regulation. The original report stated that the site fell within Sector J of the DEPZ. That was incorrect. It does in fact lie within Sector L. Upon clarification of that sector, reconsultation was carried out with the emergency planners and ONR, and they've maintained their previous objection to the provision of an additional residential unit within the DEPZ. Since the deferral, a number of appeal decisions have been received in relation to refused applications seeking residential uses, and those are set out in detail on page 57 of the report. All of these appeals have been dismissed in respect of the impact on the functioning of the off-site emergency plan. The proposal is therefore recommended for refusal for this reason, together with an additional reason regarding the lack of information on the sui generis use.
Thank you very much. So I don't have anybody down for the parish council. I don't have anybody down speaking in objection. I don't have anybody down speaking in support. And I don't have any local councillors down to speak. So I shall throw it open to the councillors on the floor. Questions to officers. Councillor Rattigan.
The generous, I mean, it doesn't, therefore it's not food, it could be nails, it could be hairdressers, it could be quite a wide range, and therefore, just the general terms of that are fairly wide, and therefore there's no indication of a pet shop or anything like that. Could you just give us a little bit more clarification? Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so it could be any use that falls outside any of the uses that are specified within the various classes within the use classes order, of which there are numerous. So we don't know what the use is. It could be a very broad spectrum, and therefore, in light of that insufficient information and clarification, we're not able to fully assess the implications of what that use might be, e.g. in terms of, parking, impact on highways, impact on amenity of neighbouring properties. So hence that reason for refusal.
Any further questions for officers? Okay, I'll throw it open for debate. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as I called it to committee, I think I'll have first stab if that's okay. This is a modest addition to Borehurst, and I'd like you to see this in light of yesterday's appeal decision, and I'm sure all my fellow councillors are aware of it, but that was for a two-bedroomed dwelling, which was in Sector K, and luckily they've put the area up there. As you can see from the location of the site, it's very close to Section K, and I take exception to the fact that Section L, where this site is, has a huge population. It says in line result in associated increase in population. Well, a one-bedroom house normally maximum would be 2 people who live there. The reality is that Tadley does not have a surfeit of businesses, or Borehurst doesn't certainly have a surfeit of businesses. But when we look at what's been approved yesterday, was for a sector that has a greater population than the sector that we are looking at for this application. Now, I've looked at the figures today just because sometimes timing is everything in life, and that appeal decision, in my view, determines that this is a modest increase. Now, I was grateful for the clarification as to what the commercial use could be. Now, we are all aware if a commercial business sets up, the hope is that they will have lots of clientele, many people using it in terms of the footprint. And of course, there's no restrictions as to Bowhurst, the Tesco's at Tadley can have hundreds of people in it at one time, although not 2 school children. So that is important to realise. And I think the wideness of the sui generis commercial use means that we can't say how many people would be there, and therefore a restriction based upon that is pretty tough, because the emergency planning is important. My view is that we should have more control over that, and I hope that through the local plan update we will have a different relationship with West Berkshire and the emergency planners. But that is not for tonight. My view, for what it is worth, is this is likely to be 1 or 2 people in terms of population to manage a business that is hopefully going to be successful. And does that really impinge upon an emergency evacuation? I don't think so. The reality is that the person who would live there is more likely to come from somewhere in that grid. And therefore, the population increase is not an increase at all. It's just it's a reallocation from N or P or Q or wherever. And therefore, I think our role is, as the planning committee, is to help organically grow places like Tadley, which have by and large not had any large scale development, and that's probably to the benefit of it. But as I spoke with Councillor Brown, we've been in this chamber many moons ago when we had proved Boundary Hole against the emergency planner's advice. And we have done it in the past, and to me, this should be, in my move for approval. It's taken many months to get back here, and during that time I've been able to do that additional research. So I hope that you, my fellow councillors, will look at that and think it is a very modest increase, and one that could be borne with an emergency plan for the business to do evacuation. But I think it is modest, and therefore I am happy with it.
Thank you. Councillor Atkin, are you moving?
Yes, I will. I mean, we've got to come to a vote at some point. So, and there's no speakers because it was late.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in terms of advice to the committee on I suppose, those points raised, in particular the issue around the DEPZ, which is something that this committee has discussed a number of times. But bring members back to the policy in your local plans. So it's policy SS7, as you know, and what that policy says is that development will only be permitted where the off-site nuclear emergency plan can accommodate the needs of the population in the event of an emergency. All development proposals within the consultation zones trigger consultation with the ONR will be considered in conjunction with the ONR, who will have regard to, and it lists out a criteria-based policy which includes the proposed use, the scale of the development proposed, and the location of development, along with the impact on the functioning of the emergency plan. The reason why no one individual point of that is determinative is because it is a collection of all matters, because the element in terms of exposure to risk is impacted by all of those factors. So in this particular instance, the use is residential, and then there's obviously a doubt over the sui generis use. The sui generis use is not the DPZ issue that we're concerned about here. It's the residential use and the increase in population, even from a one-bed dwelling. The scale of development is obviously a one-bed dwelling. That has been factored into in terms of the ONR's consideration and the emergency planner's consideration of the application, and the location of the development. It is closer to the boundary of AWE, and therefore potentially has a different emergency off-site plan response than the appeal decision that we received yesterday, because that site was further away. So on that appeal decision that was received yesterday, the ONR and emergency planners did not object, because of taking all of those factors into account and the location further from the site, it wasn't deemed something that was refusable. This is very different. This is close to the site, and it is something that ultimately we should be following the advice of those consultees on.
And just to further add, I made reference to those recent appeal decisions, and all of those planning inspectors in making those decisions referred to the incremental pressure upon the ability to carry out the off-site emergency plan in the event of a radiation event. So, whilst yes, this is might be a one-bed dwelling, it's a single dwelling, but it's that incremental pressure which is also a point to take into consideration.
Okay, Councillor Rattigan, do you have a reason for approval?
Yes, I certainly do. The proximity to, you just mentioned the appeal decision. It's actually, the appeal decision is only actually 240 yards closer. If you look at Google Maps, I've done the figures myself today. The reason for refusal is that the increase is within the bounds of possibility, that therefore it's not detrimental in terms of the population increase, in my view, and that the emergency planning has to take account of the reality that children are still born in Tadley, and we're not restricting them. We're not handing out birth control in Tadley so therefore population rises. And let's just be honest about it. Tadley has increased in size. I don't want to hold part of my ward in aspic, and I do genuinely believe that is the reason. It is not, in my view, an off-site emergency plan arrangement that would cause them any further difficulty.
So we're in danger of straying into policy, but we'll try and capture that as a reason for approval. So, yeah, can we have a summary of that?
Well, I suppose in terms of dealing with the first reason for refusal, the reason for approval that's been put forward is that the impact on, it'd have to be, that the impact on the off-site emergency plan is not considered significant or substantial, given that it's a one-bed dwelling. But as I say, that does fly in the face of the advice, very clear advice we've had from the statutory consultees in that regard. There would still be the second reason for refusal, which, like I say, is not a DPZ issue. That's a general point around the fact of, with not having a specified use, there is no way in which the authority could safely, I suppose, approve an application which deals with what that use may be in future. If it's a sui generis use, which, as Lisa's explained by definition, could be any number of things, we can't assess that without knowing what it is. That's the simple facts of the case.
Chair, sorry if I may. Obviously, before this war, the conditions were all met. Would there not be an off-site emergency plan provided by a business? That normally happens.
Sorry, Councillor, it's the second reason for refusal, which is unrelated to the DPZ issue. The second reason for refusal is more about the impact of a use not being specified on the general planning impacts of what that use may be, not to do with the DPZ issue.
Then I think I can't support this. They need to come back with a different application with a detailing of what that is. So therefore, I withdraw my approval.
Okay, well, much appreciated that you had a go at proposing. Yeah. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. The DEPZ issue is arguable because it is small scale, but it has stood the test of appeals. The sui generis bit, it's undetermined. We would have absolutely no idea or control of what's going in there. It could be a food outlet with cooking smells. It could be a motor trade outlet with a rolling road and noise. It could be health issues.
Can I just come in there? It couldn't be a retail use. By definition, it's something outside the use classes order. So an example might be a dry cleaners.
Okay. It's still the same applies. We have no idea what noise it would generate, what health risks it would generate. A lot of motor trade, I know personally, is sui generis, and there are noise issues with no control over it and no knowledge over it. there is just no way on earth we can pass this. So I move the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going back to the population. I mean, the population of Tagley fluctuates like any other place. It must go up, as Councillor Rattigan has said, with birth. It goes down with deaths. We get deaths in Tagley as well. Nothing to do with the AWE. So, I mean, but the point is it's only going to be one person, possibly two people who are going to live in this particular place. If this emergency plan can't accommodate one or two people, I might think that I should leave there myself, actually. But I've lived there for nigh on 50, 60 years now, and I've never known of any situation where there's been any talk about emergency evacuation. I agree that it has to be there has to be a plan in place to accommodate something happening over there, and I know that the AWE from local liaison committee meetings are very, very careful, very careful. They'll report to the committee about somebody falling over their own shoelace. They're very, very pernickety. And I'm quite sure that that's why we have this emergency plan in place. I couldn't vote against the officer recommendation in this situation because of SS7. But on the other hand, I can't vote for it either, I'm afraid.
Okay, Councillor Freeman, you had your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. Just my sort of two pennies worth. There's a phrase here that I think fits well. It's the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, you can keep adding one house and just one house and just one house, and how many more just one houses is going to compromise the safety of a lot of other people in the vicinity. And if the people that do these emergency plannings are telling us, no, you can't put one here, it's going to be too much strain on the system, then I think we need to be listening to them, really. So I will be supporting the officer recommendation.
Are you happy to second? Okay. Right, there being no other hands raised, we shall move to vote. We have a proposal to move the officer recommendation. Those in favour, please show.
7, 8.
And those against? And abstentions? 2. Okay, if we can have the decision recorded, please.
Thank you, Chair. The application is refused for the two reasons set out in the main agenda.
Right, thank you very much, everybody. Next item up, Tile Barn Holt at Walton Hill. Lisa, that's you again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item 2 is for the construction of an outdoor swimming pool, together with the erection of a shed to house an air source heat pump. There is no update to report. The application is before members due to the number of objections received and the officer's recommendation for approval. Tile Barn Holt was previously part of a larger single dwelling Tile Barn House, which was split into 3 properties. The entire building is Grade 2 listed and the site is in the National Landscape. The main issues for consideration are impact on the setting of the listed building and tree impacts. The scheme has been amended since the original submission to ensure an appropriate siting in respect of mature trees at the site and the setting of the listed building. Officers conclude the scheme will not harm the significance of the listed building or its settings, and there would be no unacceptable impact on neighbouring amenity or trees, and the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions from page 90 of the main report.
Thank you very much. So I don't have anyone down to speak on this, parish council, objectors, supporters or local councillors. Therefore, I'll throw it open for questions to officers. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions, if I may. Firstly, looking at the visualiser, this has been up, it refers to it several times as the rear garden. And I look at the plans on the block plan and the location plan on 94 and 95. This property doesn't have a rear garden, it only has a front garden. So why is the visualiser wrong? And whereabouts within the red line is the entrance to the garden, and whereabouts in the house is the entrance to the house?
Yeah, I think the officer has been just the garden area, which to like is kind of to the rear of the house. I think it's clear from the plans in any event where the pool is to be positioned. And sorry, your second question.
Whereabouts within the red line? I think the answer is in the north corner. Is the where's the entrance to the garden, and where in the house is the the front door of the house?
The existing gate is right in the southeast corner. Yep, down there. There's a little gate just right on that corner, and I think the entrance to the main house is there. So, southwest. I'm turning my head. Yeah.
Sorry, just trying to get my head around this one a little bit. In the very north corner of the red line on page 95, that looks like a drive entrance to me. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, I think that's the driveway, but I mean, obviously, the photos are to reflect where the swimming pool is going.
Okay, and the other half of the question was where within the property is the front door? Within the building is the front door?
Yeah, I thought you just answered that one, that point there where the steps are going up.
Oh, right, okay. I'm with you now. Sorry, I thought you were referring to the garden when you said southeast corner. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Phillimore.
Yes, we seem to be disagreeing with the good people of East Woodhay who've put their neighbourhood plan together, and in their objection they tell us that it's not in accordance with their policy HO5, and are we giving any weight to that, or are we just dismissing that?
Yeah, I think you'll see reference throughout the officer's report to the East Woodhay plan and the various policies set within. We just have a different assessment, and we've balanced all of the elements as set out in the report and reached a different conclusion to them.
Further questions? Debate? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I am concerned about this because the swimming pool isn't in the back garden, as is said on the visualiser. It's in the middle of the front garden. And when you approach this property, and it's a beautiful listed building, the first thing you are going to see is going to be a modern swimming pool. And I think there is an argument that that detracts and damages the view of the listed building. So I am concerned about it on that thing. If it was in a back garden and away and out of sight, it wouldn't be a problem, but it's not. It's right in the middle of the front garden and in full view when you approach the property. So we'll see what other people think.
Do we have a mover either for the recommendation or?
Sorry, just a point on the visualiser that we have up here. This is the view. The swimming pool would be sited in behind the hedgerow and the boundary treatments there. So as you approach it, you wouldn't see it. I'd also like to draw members' attention to the adjoining property. If you look on page 95 of, which is also set out in the main papers as well, the plan there, Tile Barn House, which is the adjoining property, you'll see to the southwest there that has recent permission for a swimming pool in a similar location to that being proposed.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. When I said approaching the house, I meant once you were within the curtilage of the property, you're going to get there, you're going to get out of your car, and the first thing you're going to see is a modern swimming pool. So I'm not happy about it. I'd like to hear what other people have got to say before I make my mind up. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll throw it open to the floor. Anybody wish to contribute anything? Councillor Miller, followed by Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Chair. These old properties with these large gardens are very attractive. I grant you that, but we're in the 21st century, and the fact that you can have the grounds and the space to put a swimming pool in, and looking at the profile of the swimming pool in the officer's report, it's not going to have high diving boards or anything around it. It's going to be just a flat recessed swimming pool. I think the point that's just been made by the officer, by Lisa, the fact that it's screened from the external views of the property, actually lends me to decide that, yes, it's been put in the right place. If you're going in and visiting the house and you're within the curtilage, it probably wouldn't surprise you the fact that it had a swimming pool, and probably you had a chance to even use it on the rare occasions we have the right weather in this country. So I would like to move the officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Bound?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'm satisfied with this application and the recommendation. I feel that the garden is sufficiently screened, and the pool itself seems to be surrounded. If you look at page 96, there are trees around which will, to a certain extent, mask certainly the two to the front will mask the pool from the house. I just hope they've got a cover to keep the leaves out of the pool, that's all.
Right, so you're happy to second? Yeah. Okay, have we got any other contributions before we move to votes? Okay, we'll move to vote. Those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Those against? Okay, if we could have the decision recorded, please.
Yep, thank you, Chair. The application is approved with the conditions set out in the main paper.
Thank you very much. And moving on to application 3, Orchard Farm, Frog Lane, Little London. Luke, I think this is one of yours, if you could introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is at Orchard Farm, Frog Lane. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing buildings, the erection of 4 business units for commercial use, falling within Class B8 and EG, with associated parking and landscaping. In terms of the update paper, the applicant submitted a biodiversity metric calculation. The information demonstrated offset mitigation could be achieved within the blue land associated with the application, which was shown on an updated location plan. As such, it was considered sufficient information has been submitted so that reason number 3 has been removed from the recommendation. So the reasons for refusal are now just 1 and 2. In addition, further information was also supplied in relation to the proposal, the principle of development. However, officers maintain their position as set out in the report. The recommendation is for refusal on the basis that the development would cause harm to the landscape character of the area.
Thank you very much. So we have no one down from Parish Council. We have no objectors wishing to speak, but speaking in support, we have Caroline Downey, Ian Lassiter and Paul Butler. If you'd like to approach, and the benches, the first row on your right, there's some microphones in front of you. So when you're seated and ready to begin, you will have 4 minutes between the 3 of you. Thank you very much.
Chairman, members, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time this evening. The application site runs along Frog Lane and used to form part of Frog Lane Farm until 2006, when it became a separate unit called Orchard Farm. There is a sawmill and other buildings on the site, and during the course of the application, the applicant tried to prove to officers that the site had been in commercial use since the 1950s, but officers did not agree, and their main reason for objection is due to the impact on the landscape and the change from what they perceive to be an agricultural to commercial use. The site has a historic use as a sawmill and a yard, and as a storage area for local businesses, specifically, more recently, a landscape business who stored machinery and materials on site. We submitted evidence that the site was used as a sawmill from the 1950s until 2006, when the landscape business took over the site, until the applicant bought the site in 2020. We therefore believe that the site has been in commercial use since the sawmill business in the 50s. The site, in our opinion, is therefore a brownfield site and not agricultural. To those who came to the site on Friday last week, firstly, thank you very much. The site falls away from Frog Lane, which is bordered by a high hedge. This, coupled with the topography, means that the first unit may be glimpsed through the hedge, whilst the other units are considerably lower than the road. And so the argument made by officers as to the visual amenity seems somewhat incongruous when standing in situ, as many of you experienced during the site visit. The footpath is 300 metres away, and the buildings from the adjacent site at Frog Lane Farm, which are now used for commercial purposes, an existing vehicle body shop and a car mechanic, are closer to the footpath and will act as a buffer to the proposed buildings, which are lower in height than the existing Dutch barn. There is further commercial business by way of a contractor's yard further south, which is also part of the adjacent Frog Lane Farm. Comments from the parish and the public relate in part to the highway's impact. The movements in and out of the site will be minimal at the start and end of the day. A transport statement was provided as part of the application process, and the Highways Authority have raised no objection. Therefore, the single main objection is in relation to the impact on the landscape. Importantly, there has been no formal objection from the landscape officer, so this objection is raised at planning officer level. The refusal reason relates to the impact on the character, visual amenity and scenic quality of the local landscape. Firstly, there is no landscape designation. The land in question is, in our opinion, a brownfield site. The proposed units are designed to sit well into the topography of the site and are profiled in green to blend into the local landscape. Secondly, the removal of the existing sawmill and Dutch barn that are in a state of disrepair will enable local businesses to thrive. The existing policy that supports rural business, EP4, and the emerging policy, EMP4, are policies that specifically support the growth of supporting rural enterprises. The emerging policy is even more supportive, and the officer acknowledges that the application complies in part with this policy. Councillors, the site under consideration is a brownfield site that has seen its use evolve and change over the years. The land is evidently not agricultural, and so we ask you this: is the landscape harm so substantial and detrimental when considered against the benefits to local business and local employment? In our opinion, the planning balance weighs heavily in favour of overturning the officer recommendation and approving the scheme before you this evening. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for public speakers, councillors? Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you. You're proposing 4 industrial units. How many staff could they take? It's difficult to understand how many we've mentioned vehicle movements.
It could be anything from 1 to 2 people. I mean, a lot of businesses will be single owners using it effectively. So I can't see, maximum of maybe 2 cars per unit.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you just triggered something off in my mind. Currently, there's a landscaping business there. Your words.
Yes.
But these 4 units, would they be used by separate businesses?
Well, probably, my business myself would operate from 3 of them, and another business, a landscape business, would operate from the other one.
Okay, any further questions? Don't see any hands raised. Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. Councillor Slimming, do you wish to speak? Welcome to Development Control. You'll probably know the drill by now. You've got 4 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies for the mask. I've had some dental treatment, and so I'm probably going to swear my words, so bear with me. Thank you for coming to the site visit, those who were able to come. I have some concerns about the designation of the site. As hopefully you observed when you were there is already hard standing on the site, and it is historic, although not now as obvious as it was because the grass has grown since the sawmill no longer exists there. I spent some Google Earth snaps to you dating back to 1999, and when it can be seen that the sawmill, when in operation, there were many vehicles that were using that hard standing, and I hope that most of you were able to see that. Based on these and what I saw myself on an earlier visit, I have considered that this application to be for commercial use on a brownfield site that is being much improved. I have seen no evidence that this site has been used for animals or crop growing for many years, and thus, in my view, it is not an agricultural site. There has been a sawmill on the site since the 1950s that made and sold timber items such as gates and fences for local farms and others. So, as a layman, it would appeal to be commercial use, and thus its current planned and future use are remaining the same. I have no reason to believe that the current use is not as stated in the application. Planned improvements of the site will not incur further traffic or have an unacceptable impact on the area of surrounding properties where some diversification has already appeared to have taken place. The demolition of the current dilapidated old sawmill and the general tidying planned must improve the local outlook. Having read the officer's report, I am unsure what the site is being designated as in planning terms, but I understand that you are standing by agricultural. Certainly the legal information that is provided was more confusing than helpful. The plans submitted do not demonstrate the steepness of the site that you were able to see when you were there, and that the land sloped significantly away from the road. Hence, as already been explained, this means that the buildings themselves will only be seen from the road on the first building, which is on a smaller footprint than the current sawmill is there, and there is a very large hedge which is going to be maintained.
1 minute.
Thank you. The other similar buildings will drop behind and so won't be visible. And the Dutch barn is right at the bottom and is going to be smaller than was originally there. The applicant has advised that he will clad the building in whatever material you decide if approved. And it will be sympathetic. It currently is a black wooden structure with a metal roof. The biodiversity item has been overcome because obviously a late submission was requested and that has been agreed, and so that is no longer an application objection. I am in sympathy with this application. I've seen no written report from the landscape team as to why the objections have been made, or if there's been any update from them after the biodiversity information has been provided. I believe that this application should be allowed to continue to allow local rural businesses to operate from the site, providing jobs in the rural area, which will not have any greater impact on the surrounding environment than is currently in place, and will indeed improve the area aesthetically. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Any questions for Councillor Slipping? Councillors? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much for your contribution. Questions for officers? Councillor Phillimore?
Yes, cheers, Chair. I also picked up the comments that Mrs Downey and Joe Slimmer made about landscape. In the update paper, reasons for refusal, number 1 quotes landscape impacts, number 2 quotes visual amenity and scenic quality of local landscape. But my question is why are the landscape consultees not providing any comments if it was that strong? Is this usual? We'd expect to see no objection or a refusal come forward?
They're not statutory consultees, and obviously the landscape team may or may not comment. They don't comment on everything. We don't consult them on everything, but we are professional officers, despite not, we are able to assess, and we do on a regular basis, the impact of all sorts of proposals on the landscape. So just because you don't have a landscape officer comment doesn't mean that you still don't have a professional view and assessment from another officer.
Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Chair. Could you tell me, would a landscape gardening business be legitimate under a sort of farming agricultural use, or would it be classed as a commercial use, or is it one that could possibly fit in either way?
My understanding is the definition of agriculture wouldn't include a commercial landscape contractor business.
Any more questions? Councillor Durham?
Thank you, Chair. I'm conflicted over this because of the definition of the land, because it clearly to me seems to be a brownfield site, and I don't see a problem with continuing commercial or industrial activity, but I'm conflicted because of that. I don't understand why we're not considering it a brownfield site, and also Frog Lane is a very narrow road. It's used a lot by.
Is there a question in this?
Yeah, the question is why am I conflicted between a brownfield and a greenfield site?
Okay.
So how can somebody help me deconflict, for want of a better word?
So the officer's view, as set out in the report, is the site is agricultural, and the scheme in front of us is considering the development as set out in terms of the 4 commercial units on this site. This application isn't a lawful development certificate. We aren't considering the lawful use. There haven't been that information presented in front of you for you to be able to consider that. I think the key here is to look at what we're looking at in terms of the scheme is for the 4 commercial units, and the officer's recommendation is there is harm to the landscape. So we're not looking at what the use is. I think we need to look at what impact the development has on the landscape character. And that's the assessment that's set out in front of you and set out in the 2 reasons for refusal and the principle. Obviously, EP4 talks about the principle, and that relates under there. There's categories looking at landscape harm. The officer's clearly defined there is landscape harm, and once again, we look at the landscape and character of the area policies, and they also fail those. So I think the key is to look at what the development is hard standing surrounding the 4 commercial units, and therefore there is landscape harm, rather than looking at the land use, which is not what we're considering.
Okay, then any further questions? So yes, before I throw it open to debate, so it's not for us to consider the legal definitions. That's not in front of us tonight. We don't have the expertise to do that. We don't have the information to do that. But what we can do is look at the application in front of us and see what the impact of that would be should it be granted planning permission. And those of us who visited the site would have seen what the visible aspects of it were and what the potential impact would be on the landscape. So at this point, I'll quite happily throw it open to debate. Does anyone want to lead? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the important thing here is those of us that attended the viewing panel. I don't criticise visualisers, but they can't give you a 3D view and get a real appreciation of a site. And this is a classic case of go on the viewing panel, because looking at it, and I can understand some of the comments that have been made up to this point over this application, you can become conflicted because it is confusing just by looking at the site. However, the evidence that, or lack of, that is highlighted in the report by the officers is what the kind of guidance that we're given as councillors on this committee. Yes, at first glance, I would go along with, there is, and it's been admitted, there's a commercial business in place on the particular site. But going on, I won't say the however again, I take notice of the officers here, and those comments that you have made, Chairman. I'm prepared to support the officer's recommendation in this particular case for refusal, because unless there's real clarification, we have to address what is in front of us in the report this evening.
So, for clarification, are you moving the recommendation?
Absolutely.
Councillor Rattigan, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I disagree with Councillor Miller, rarely, but even tonight. My view is that it is not an agricultural site. As one who was there, there's been no livestock on that land, no planting of crops. There's been no agricultural activity on that, probably since the sawmill was there. The site, which I had doubts about, the site which slopes away from the road, limits the impact of the new buildings. And in my view, having looked at the reasons for refusal, the landscape impact is in one, and that impact is very limited on that. If we go to the reasons for refusal 2, it would introducing an inappropriate commercial development. Well, there is a commercial development, and if they started again as a sawmill, there would be no problem. In a countryside location, I do not believe that that site, amongst all of the sites that have commercial activity close by, and we could see them from the viewing, it says it's unsympathetic. Well, the character is already there. It's already made. The visual amenity of the old barn and the business that is already there, I think is already impactful. The fact that the road is pretty quiet. The applicant says he's going to use some of them and there would be additional people coming in. I do not believe it would change the rural and tranquil nature of that, or of Frog Lane, and therefore I genuinely cannot support the reasons for refusal, and I will be hoping that we get an opportunity to pass this.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard from Luke that the landscape gardening businesses that have run there actually fall within the agricultural planning bracket. So actually, what the applicant says they want to use these units for, no change is required. Don't need this application. And the application as it is for a B8, which includes storage and distribution. So we're not only talking about stuff going in and out, we could be talking about a lot of vans and heavy lorries going in and out. And it's a narrow lane, it's not suitable for that sort of traffic. Anybody who has seen an articulated lorry reversing out the single part of Cufford Lane in Bramley will know what I'm talking about, because you meet one coming the other way. You have absolutely in the future, when these units change hands to new owners doing something completely different, we will have absolutely no control whatsoever of what's going on with the traffic movements. So I will second the reason for refusal, support the officers, but I would actually like to add that it's the unsafe access, because with the industrial units down single track roads just does not work. They should be on industrial estates with proper roads that are wide enough to take the sort of vehicles that you can expect down there. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a live proposal, move and second, but Councillor Faulkner, I'll let you speak before we move to vote.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just quickly, I was on the site visit, so saw what was there. It's agricultural, and the fact that the site has become dilapidated, derelict, a sawmill that no longer works, I don't see that as a reason for a fundamental change to its use. And when you try to visualise 4 industrial units which would fill up the site, I would go along with point 2 on the reason for refusal, that it would be a bit of a carbuncle in the countryside. So I will also support the officer's recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Finlay, you'll be the last one, then we'll move to vote.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't make the site view and chair, but I was only parachuted in at the last minute. I support Councillor Rattigan's views, and also, there's only 3 objections. I support the view of a knowledgeable ward councillor who seems to know her stuff about her own ward, so I should be going for approval.
So I think we've got some clarification before we actually do the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Just clarified 2 quick points. One was that the response that we gave in relation to the landscaping business, that would not be within the agricultural use. Just clarify that, but I appreciate the other points that Councillor Robinson would make were slightly distinct from that in any case. In relation to the concerns raised around access and highways, do acknowledge those. As the report sets out, we don't have any objection from the Highway Authority. It could, of course, obviously impact on, I suppose, the character of the area in terms of vehicles being on the site, etc., which is essentially within the reasons for refusal already. So I think Councillor Miller's put forward, moved the recommendation as is, and it's a clarification as to whether Councillor Robinson's happy to second it on that basis.
No, I'll second it on the basis that Councillor Miller proposed it.
Okay, live proposal on the table. Move to vote. Those in favour of refusal, please show. 7. Okay. Those against? 2. Okay. That's fairly clear cut. Can we have the decision, please?
Thank you, Chair. The application is refused as per the officer's reasons for refusal set out in the report. And the update paper. The two reasons refused on the update paper.
Right, thank you very much. And moving on, application 4, land adjoining Pambert Green Riding School. Luke, if you could introduce that one, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application at land adjoining Pambert Riding School. Planning permission is sought for a change of use of the land from agriculture to equestrian. This includes the erection of a stable block and a menage with provision for parking. The proposal would be for personal and private equestrian use only. There are no updates associated with this scheme, and the planning application is recommended for permission subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report.
Thank you very much. So we have no parish council down, no objectors, but we have Mike Cole speaking in support. If you'd like to approach the benches to rights. Welcome to Development Control. When you're ready, if you push the button on your right, you'll have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of the application on behalf of my client, Mr. Sears. Your officers have prepared a comprehensive committee report which considers each of the issues raised of the objectors thoroughly and appropriately justifies the recommendation for approval based on how it accords with the adopted development plan policies, the development plan documents on their policies. In July 2023, Mr. Sears secured planning permission for a new dwelling. Adjacent to this application site, the new dwelling, located on New Road, is to be the family home for Mr. Sears once completed. Mr. Sears is an avid horse rider, and it has been his dream to have his family home with close and easy access to his horses. At present, he owns 3 rescue horses, with the intention of increasing this to 6 should planning permission be granted. Approval of this proposal would realise his family dream. The access to the stable and menage would be past his family home. There is no intention for this to become a commercial stable, so the condition number 7 suggested by your officers is acceptable to the applicant. Care was taken by the applicant when considering where to locate the stable block and menage. It is deliberately located the 2 elements away from the line of existing housing to the east of the site. This was to ensure their views towards Pamber Forest and maintained and minimise any perception of loss of privacy or amenity impact. The question use is prevalent in the area, with permission recently being granted by officers for a menage on land to the south of New Road and Cottage Farm. The character of the area is made up of stables and subdivided fields for the grazing of horses. This proposal is reflective of this established character. The Highway Authority raises no objection to the proposal. With the proposed use being private, there will be minimal change to the number of vehicles entering and leaving the site, utilising the access shared with the family dwelling. This would not have a severe impact on the function of the highway. There is no objection from the Council on drainage matters. There is a detailed drainage strategy proposed with this application to ensure drainage on this site is improved. Your officers are content with the strategy and recommended a condition number 8 to ensure the development is carried out in accordance with the submitted information. The Environmental Health Officer raises no objection to the proposal, save for the not wanting to see lighting for the menage. This is recommended condition number 6 that is accepted to the applicant also. We appreciate there are concerns from local residents about the location of the manure storage. As recognised by your case officer, the site is located over 40 metres from the nearest residence. Therefore, no unacceptable impact is anticipated by them, but for the avoidance of doubt, the applicant has confirmed that the manure storage will be within a container located on the hard standing around the stable block. The manure will be recycled off-site to ensure no big build-ups on site.
1 minute left.
Thank you, Chairman. The applicant is mindful of the Council's drive to ensure the environment is enhanced and impact on the environment is minimised. It is intention to install grey water recycling to capture rainwater and runoff from the roof of the stable to provide the drinking water for the horses. Furthermore, on the land within his control, he has set about planting new hedgerows, approximately 600 metres of hedges and trees to help improve the biodiversity across his land, as he has recognised the benefits of enhancing the natural environment can have to him and his family. New trees will also be planted in due course to further enhance and provide natural shade. We hope that members agree with the recommendation for approval set out within the committee report. Mr. Sears and I are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any questions? Councillor Ettigan, followed by Councillor Court.
Thank you. I just want to know how, this is for personal use, but how closely is the applicant to the site to be able to do things on it?
Apologies,
Yeah,
it's off the side.
We're a bit further down, slightly back there.
Yeah.
Bit down a bit more. There you go. That's where the house is. Thank you.
How many horses are going to be stored there? Because they've mentioned about the waste.
Maximum of 5, it's not 6. So when you put that space in, don't want to overcrowd it. Obviously, we've had a little bit of rain this year, and so we know what the land's going to act like. So.
Yeah, if you could use the mic, then it gets captured on the webcast. Sorry. No further questions. Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if we had it clarified whether this is for private or for livery use.
No. Definitely not.
Thank you.
Oh.
Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, we have no ward councillors down to speak. Questions for officers? I see no hands raised. Okay, in which case we'll move to debate. Councillor Rattigan?
I'm happy with the recommendation as stated. Thank you.
Are you moving?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Miller?
Seconded.
Councillor Freeman and Councillor Durrant?
I was just going to second the motion.
So was I.
Great. Right. We have a live proposal on the table. We'll move to vote. All those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. So if we could have the decision recorded, please.
So the application has been approved, subject to the conditions listed in the report. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Application number 5, 1 Heath Road, Pamber Heath. If we could have the officer introduction, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is an application to vary condition 1, that is the approved plans of Planning Permission 2300693 FUL, which was for the erection of a replacement dwelling to allow the rearrangement of the approved scheme. The alterations include those matters set out under the proposal section on page 145 of the main report, including the addition of a further 4th dormer window to the rear roof slope. There is no update. The original planning permission established the principle of the replacement dwelling at this location. Given the small-scale nature of the proposed changes, which are considered to be of an appropriate design, acceptable in relation to impact on character of the area and in relation to neighbouring amenity, the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out at page 149 of the main report.
Thank you. And I have nobody down to speak, so unless we have some questions for officers? We have none. Right, move straight to debate. Anyone want to move this? Councillor Robinson? Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I remember us giving planning permission to this in the first place, and I didn't like it then. But the change from 3 dormers at the back to 4 dormers at the back doesn't change anything. It doesn't increase the overbearing much, and it certainly doesn't increase the overlooking. So I move the officer recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Miller?
For the second time, I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak? Right, we'll move to vote. Those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. So if we have the decision recorded, please.
Yep, the application is approved, subject to the conditions set out in the main paper.
Okay, application number 6, Meadowview, Sheffield Road, Bramley.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application at Meadowview in Bramley. Planning permission is sought for a replacement dwelling for a 4-bedroom house following the demolition of the existing bungalow, workshop and garage. The scheme includes an access drive to the side of the property which would lead to a single detached garage to the rear. There are no updates to this application, and the application is recommended for permission subject to the conditions listed within the officer's report.
Excellent, thank you very much. Do we have a Councillor Flux here from... Have I got the wrong one? No, Councillor Bell from Bramley Parish Council.
Councillor Bell has just gone to the toilet, and the security guard's been back in, so could Councillor Flukes read his notes?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep. Fine. So, welcome to Development Control. When you're ready, press the right-hand button and you'll have 4 minutes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. As a parish council, we are here to try, we are there to try to look after the interests of the community, to maintain their well-being and maintain the character of the village. Not against housing development, and this piece of land is supported a bungalow built many years ago, which is now semi-derelict. It can take redevelopment, and this application on a standalone basis is, as has been said, partly acceptable. More than one on this narrow, long plot is unacceptable. This is unlike Marguerite Close, which is twice the width of this plot, and takes Marguerite House at the front and 2 bungalows at the rear of the plot, with a driveway sufficient to take 2 cars side by side. They fit in perfectly with the surrounding area and are in accord with the Bramley Neighbourhood Plan Character Assessment. Whilst the officer has assessed the application as a single application, he does refer to the second application for bungalows to the rear of this plot. Reading the papers associated with this application, it gives the impression throughout that this is a single application on a plot of land, but it is only on half of what is available, and it is all a deceitful ploy to get it accepted in the knowledge that the second application will be treated on the same basis. The transport assessment for this application is the same as the transport application for the backland development, as it is referred to. The difference being, for this application it is a transport assessment, and for the other it is an access statement. This application states replacing existing residential with a single detached dwelling, resulting in negligible increase in traffic and improvement on the existing access arrangement, whilst backland application states propose replace existing residential bungalow, building 2 new semi-detached bungalows with negligible increase in traffic. This is copy and pasting from the same company. This application on a standalone basis is not a problem. It'll replace an existing bungalow and be in accord with the Apsley Villa one side and Marguerite House the other side. Impact on the street scene will be acceptable for the width of the plot. Then this development or house, because of the width, should be seen more in keeping with Apsley Villa, which is on the right-hand side, which was built years ago and sits comfortably on the plot, as does the existing bungalow on the whole plot. In every respect, it is only one residential house on this plot of land. Residents will then have a lovely home with a beautiful long garden. In 2006, an application, Basingstoke Dean 64777, was granted for a 3-bedroom dwelling with detached garage. The formation of new vehicular access following the demolition of the existing bungalow and outbuildings on this whole plot. Has anything changed? It's the same plot of land.
1 minute left.
On those plans, you can see the size of the plot compared to Marguerite Close, accepted in 1999. I ask you as councillors to accept these points and do not spoil matters accepting more when the only beneficiary is developer or builder. Bramley is not down in the local plan for more housing. Basingstoke and Dean has the new 4-year land supply availability. This has been a single bungalow. This has to be a single bungalow replacement with a more modern house in keeping with the surrounding area on the whole of the plot. As a PC, what more can we say? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much for your contribution. So I have nobody down to speak in objection to this application, but I do have Howard Williamson down to speak in support, if you'd like to approach. Welcome to Development Control. When you're ready, press the button on the right and you'll have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Howard Williamson and I am the applicant. I would first of all like to acknowledge the recommendation to approve from the officer and the detailed analysis of the application and all the submissions undertaken so far. I'd also like to state that the proposed conditions and informatives contained within the report are acceptable should the committee be mindful to support the officer's recommendation. This proposal follows a number of unsuccessful applications for this site, and we have worked hard with the officer to resolve issues and concerns raised by the officer, parish council and local residents. I don't propose to review the recommendation in detail, however, I would like to highlight some key points in support of the application. The existing site has remained unoccupied for the best part of 2 decades, which is, in the current climate of housing shortages, is unacceptable. The existing 3-bedroom detached bungalow is in a poor state of repair and is not fit for human habitation at this time. Planning was previously granted for a replacement detached dwelling in December 2006. This was not acted upon and subsequently lapsed. No further attempts appear to have been made following this to bring the property back into use until the sale of the property in October 22 when it was acquired by my company. The proposed replacement dwelling has been designed to fit in with the existing established properties. A 4-bedroom, 2-storey design is flanked by similarly sized detached 2-storey properties and maintains a similar height and built form. The design is acknowledged by the officer to be an improvement on the existing bungalow, which is regarded as having no architectural merit and would present well within the current street scene. The replacement detached house and associated garage will occupy approximately 0.2 acre plot within the existing site, providing all the necessary parking, amenity space and access for a modern building of this type. The officer's report confirms that it meets all relevant policies and standards, both local and national. In addition, care has been taken to ensure that the plot incorporates extensive soft and hard landscaping, which contributes to net gains in biodiversity while maintaining a similar look and feel in the locality. As the plot is in a locally defined critical drainage area, steps have been taken to ensure the disposal of all surface water within the site in a sustainable manner. In conclusion, this proposal provides much improved replacement dwelling to the existing, which will reintroduce the property back into the local housing supply after 2 decades lying unoccupied. The replacement dwelling will harness the latest energy efficiency technologies, providing low energy consumption and minimise emissions based upon a sustainable design. This concludes my submission. I'm happy to take any questions from the committee concerning this application.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillors, do we have any questions for Mr. Williamson? Okay, thank you very much for your contribution, Mr. Williamson. And Councillor Tomlin, if you'd like to approach. So I'm sure you know the drill by now. When you're ready, you get 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Excuse me. I agree that this building that we see before us would be of an acceptable design and not adversely impact the street scene, such that the application cannot be refused on those planning grounds alone. I'm a little disappointed that I've not been able to read how this development might help the council's climate emergency. I hear it's to be built to modern standards, but I'd like to have read more. But my problem is that this is so inextricably linked with the following application, item 7, that we'll come on to. It's not an ideal situation. I can't see how we can separate what's in front of us from the 2 applications, because this should be a standalone application that we can evaluate and assess without the influence of item 7, because the layout that we have in front of us shows this house, but it incorporates design features on the site, on the land, that would accommodate the second application being granted. For example, the very narrow side access to the rear garage, a compromised rear garden layout. In fact, a very small plot meets our standards, but there is a much bigger site that is not discussed. It is strangely enough the site for the 2 bungalows. So we don't have any reference to any landscaping of that land should item 7 not be granted and this be a single site application, a building using the full site. We've got no soft landscaping details or even the biodiversity calculations for such a complete use of the site. So I can't help but conclude that this whole application assumes item 7 will be approved for it to all fit together as part of this jigsaw, when in fact it may not, and therefore we will have a compromise if this is agreed as an approved application. So I wonder whether members might consider a referral on this to obtain more information on the detail of the site that it could be if item 7 were not to be granted. I really see that this is a complicated matter, and I'm I suppose disappointed that it's come to this complicated two application rather than one house or 3 houses. It would have been so much easier if it was done that way. So I'll leave those thoughts with you, and hopefully you'll have a good debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlin. Any questions for Councillor Tomlin? Councillor Phillimore.
Councillor Tomlin, Mr Williamson did refer to a housing shortage and supply in Bramley. Is that a comment you tend to agree with? Thank you. No, I don't agree with that. If you look at Bramley, it has taken 350 plus houses against a minimum of 200 in the current local plan. It's such that the emerging local plan has actually made a 0 allocation for Bramley for the foreseeable period of the plan. And actually, there is 140 houses that have been granted planning permission on top of that 0. So I don't believe Bramley has any shortage of any house at this present time.
Any more questions? Thank you for your contribution, Councillor Tomlin. Questions for officers? Councillor Court, follow up.
Thank you, Chair. In light of what we've just heard, can we get it clarified whether this is to be treated as one or 2 separate submissions, or what are we meant to consider?
I can confirm this application is treated as one. We are looking at replacement dwelling with the red edge around the application site, and that is what we are considering. So it is the single. So we just have to look at the information that's in front of us in terms of what the application presents and is it policy compliant, which, as set out in the report, it complies with all relevant policies.
Yep.
To supplement, just to clarify that, we're considering item number 6 on the agenda as its own application and not linked to any other.
Yes, that is correct. Both items are independent of each other and operate independently of each other.
Councillor Miller.
Asked and answered.
Thank you very much. Being no more hands raised, I shall throw it open to debate. Councillor Miller.
On that basis, I think there's going to be a bit of more of a dilemma on maybe the next application, but on that basis, the design of this particular plot, the red line, which is half of the, we understand, of this garden plot, would probably have been a different design, and that point's already been made. That's where I have a problem here. This has been designed in association with number 7, and that's where we saw that on site. I hear what the officers are saying. However, it was in our face on the viewing panel, and you can't get it out of your mind that this is all connected, whether you like it or not. And I just express uncertainty in my own mind how this is going to go, because I know if I had a plot this size, that house wouldn't be where it is. And that's the problem, is that this is, if you like, a constructed mechanism of facilitating 3 houses.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to clarify again, I suppose, the basis on which the committee needs to consider the application, understand why thoughts are around the implications of the second application because of where the property is, but that is simply not before us in terms of determining this application. So in a different way of looking at it, someone may choose simply to put a property, one side or other, depending on the application, but it is to be determined on its own, simply as a replacement, not with any thought around the second application. Because this application, if it was granted, can be implemented on its own. It is not reliant on the second application. It doesn't have any impact in that regard. Someone could, for example, theoretically, simply put a fence across their plot and subdivide it front to back and have a front part. It's highly unlikely they would do so, but it is theoretically possible. So it does have to be considered solely on the basis of the replacement dwelling. Is the design acceptable or not? For the reasons out in the report, it's considered that the design is acceptable. That has no bearing in relation to the second application.
Okay, Councillor Durrant.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't attend the site viewing, but I live sort of just a quarter of a mile away. So I know the area very well and I know the property very well. I don't have a particular problem with a replacement house. And I don't have a problem with its positioning on the plot because it completes the street scene. But key to all the houses along that road, as you can see, Marguerite Close was a bit of an exception because it was a double-sized plot. But all of them have houses by the road and very long gardens. It's a feature of those houses. And therefore, at the moment, I don't have a problem with the house. I have a problem with the use of the land. It's not in keeping with the area surrounding it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually crystal clear on what we're looking at. We're looking at a replacement dwelling within the red line that is given on the map in front of us. And whilst we might not like the design and we might have suspicions about ulterior motives to this design, that is what we're looking at. A house that is of a very similar size to the one next door to it, positioned with sufficient space around it. And so I don't like it, but I look at it totally in planning terms and I cannot see a viable reason to refuse it. What goes on the next planning application with the two bungalows is an entirely different matter. So we've just got to put those out of our mind. So whilst I don't like it, I can't see a reason to refuse it, and I move the officer recommendation.
Thank you very much. So we have a proposal on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Freeman. Anyone else wish to contribute? We shall move to vote in that case then. Those in favour, please show. Nine, okay. Those against? Abstentions? One. Okay. If we can have the decision, please.
So the application has been has been approved, subject to the conditions listed in the officer's report.
Thank you very much. So, item number 7, also Meadowview, Sherfield Road, Bramley. So, Luke, if you could introduce that one, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is at Meadowview, to the rear of the previous application. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a semi-detached bungalow, each dwelling providing 2 bedrooms. The development would be served by the new access, parking area and rear garden. The application is recommended for permission subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report.
Thank you very much. Now, in terms of people down to speak, we have Mr. Councillor Flukes of Bramley Parish Council. Welcome again. So, when you're ready, you'll have another 4 minutes.
Well, here I'm again discussing an overdevelopment of a very, very narrow plot. The officer's comparison of the layout of that of Marguerite House next door is somewhat disingenuous. This plot is 15 metres wide and within that has to include a 4-metre access road. This may prove somewhat difficult without damaging the boundary hedge. Margaret House next door is 30.9 metres wide and includes an 8-metre wide access road, which allows all three dwellings to sit comfortably within the plot. The planned pair of bungalows, as shown on the plans, is 15 metres wide, i.e. no side access to the garden or bike shed, so it could hardly be said to fit comfortably. The access road to and from this site and its parking appears inadequate. The 4 occupier parking spaces and 1 guest space effectively fill the area, leaving no rooms for a delivery van to turn round, and may well result in delivery vans, etc., having to reverse onto the Sherfield Road. Quoting a housing need from 2013 for Bramley is somewhat misleading. Since that figure was included in the NDP, the village has had over 300 new build dwellings, plus 140 more about to be built, numerous commercial buildings converted to housing. This more than satisfies any local need, as 40% of new builds are low cost or affordable. Seems a case of build and they will come. Now we come to the really significant problem with more housing in Bramley, the sewage system, which is struggling. Thames Water have developed an alleviation plan. The new funding for this is not expected to be approved until January next year. Work is not expected until at least March next year. And this assumes that Thames Water will still exist in its present form. The often repeated mantra that Thames Water have an obligation to provide infrastructure is wearing somewhat thin. All our recent housing approvals have been conditional on work on the sewage system, and yet we still suffer sewage spills and overflows. Thames Water have a habit of responding that all is well in their system. However, their engineers, whom we regularly meet, suggest otherwise, and they suggest that no extra flow to the number 1 sewage pumping station should be accepted until these works are complete. The village also has an oversubscribed doctor's surgery and school, an inadequate bus service, only 1 shop to serve over 2,000 homes, and a severe traffic problem caused by the railway crossing and its junction with Bramley Lane. In short, Bramley is full. Please reject this inappropriate extra housing which overfills the narrow plot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do we have any questions for Councillor Flukes? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much for your contribution. Right, so I have nobody down to speak in objection, but we have Howard Williamson down to speak in support. If you'd like to approach, thank you. Welcome again. We've got 4 minutes when you're ready.
Good evening again. Yes, I acknowledge a lot of the comments that were made by the parish council and the councillor regarding the previous application. Nevertheless, I think that these 2 applications do actually stand alone and have been considered as such, and it wasn't some ruse to try and get around a complete development site. The idea was to give flexibility in development going forward. It may well be that not both of these application, or shall we say proposals, go ahead. It's merely to provide flexibility in terms of the implementation in an opportune time. The plot extends to approximately 0.2 of an acre and is located at the rear of Meadowview, as already been said, and provides more than adequate space for a pair of semi-detached 2-bedroom bungalows, associate parking and private amenity space required to provide modern and sustainable accommodation. The officer's report confirms that it meets all relevant policies and standards, both local and national, and access to the site is provided by a shared driveway along the eastern boundary, which accesses Sherfield Road via a modified drive entrance, which complies with Highways Guideline TG3. It's also worth noting that the traffic transportation study was done, and the incremental impact on a much larger development, which was previously rejected, actually came to the conclusion there was negligible harm to the highway loading and safety. The principle of backland development has already been established in the area with adjacent Marguerite Close, and the design of the pair of bungalows takes its cue from the bungalows in Marguerite Close, to the extent that outwardly the building takes on the appearance of a single detached one-storey bungalow. The position, form, scale and height of the dwelling closely matches the neighbouring properties and does not overlook or unduly interfere with their privacy, light or amenity space. The submitted street scene drawing with the existing bungalow omitted demonstrates the fact that it does fit in well within the current designs of the adjacent Marguerite Close, and it was omitted just to show that clarity. If the bungalow is put back in place in terms of a street scene view, the actual view of the rear of the property is virtually negligible from the actual street itself. So you couldn't actually view this, say, apart from looking down the driveway that serves the property. The needs for these, I acknowledge a lot of development has gone on in Bramley, but the fact is that there is a need for these types of dwellings within Bramley because a lot of the houses being built have been much larger in form, 3 and 4 bedroom houses. And the report actually mentions the fact that Bramley does have a shortfall in 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings. These would be ideal for younger people and small families and those wishing to downsize in the local community as defined in Policy H2 of the Bramley Neighbourhood Plan. The addition of 2 dwellings into the local housing stock, although modest, is nevertheless a positive contribution, along with the associated SIL contribution and other ongoing local taxes. In conclusion, the proposal provides more efficient utilisation of an existing large 0.4-acre brownfield site to provide much-needed 2-bedroom accommodation into the Bramley housing stock. The dwellings will harness the latest energy-efficient technologies, providing low energy consumption and minimise emissions based upon a sustainable design. With regards to the comment that the building was 15 metres wide, in fact that's incorrect, it's 13 metres wide and actually allows for 1 metre access down either side of the bungalows. There is a local need for this, and the sewage system issue, although recognised, is not something that actually should impact on the planning decision as such. And in fact, Thames Water was consulted on a larger development, and as has been previously said, they said no problem with that. So this being smaller, there's no reason to suspect that they would have objected to this either. And in fact, they were consulted and there was no comment. This concludes my submission. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Miller, you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. On page 210, proposed floor plans, we've got the overall width of the bungalows, unless I'm reading it wrong, as 15,000 millimetres, which is 15 metres.
That is incorrect. That actually
okay,
is...
so,
that is,
okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I don't see any hands up. Okay, thank you very much for your contribution, Mr. Williamson. And Councillor Tomlin. Welcome back. You have 4 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening again. So here we are then. Of course, it's as if by magic. Here is an application that fits the gap that was left from the previous one. It is obviously an application for a pair of semi-detached bungalows in a backland development. I did explain in the question to Councillor Phillimore about I do not believe there is a need for this type of housing in Bramley, given the number of houses that are coming our way. So that I won't reiterate that, but it's still the point. Again, I think members who went on the viewing panel will have noticed the adjacent Marguerite Close site and the width that Councillor Flukes alluded to. It's a similar development, yes, but it's on a much wider plot. And you've just heard that in fact, the information we have is that the houses are 15 metres wide, as shown on the drawing that's been submitted as part of the application that you're about to approve, fitting in a plot that's only 15 metres wide. Therefore, whilst it implies there's a footpath either side, that's going to be incredibly narrow, as in invisible. But therefore, we have incorrect drawings on page 210.
But another point, the master bedroom windows on these two bungalows are right up to the boundary. They're either on the fence or they're within a metre of a 1.8 high metre fence. Now, on page 193 of the officer's report, it suggests that as these are only bedroom number 2, but it says they're bedroom 1 with a ensuite, so I read that as they are the master bedrooms, and therefore as they're only number 2, they do not affect the amenity of the residence. However, they are the main bedroom, so it must therefore be considered that they are contrary to EM10 subsect 2B and not of high quality residential amenity. It's bedroom 2 that has the open aspect, so this needs clarification for members to debate. So this development of the bungalow will form a wall-like structure across the site. I put it to you that this is in conflict with our local plan EM10 quality of build. It's contrary to D2 of Bramley Neighbourhood Plan, which requires good design, and of course MPPF Section 12 says achieving beautiful places, so I don't see it fits that either. Access past the now approved detached dwelling is to be via a narrow 4-metre strip, which is likely to damage and limit the vegetation or any greenery between neighbouring properties and this site. Delivery vehicles will pass by ground floor windows in close proximity of this detached property.
1 minute.
Manoeuvring of delivery vehicles will also be challenged in the proposed parking area of this site. Again, I see no soft landscaping details available. They're to be set by condition, and I'm afraid that's a poor reflection on our ecological emergency stance as a borough council. And I'm also disappointed, again, I'm not reading the details of how this development might help our climate emergency. So I'll leave those thoughts with you, members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlin. Any questions for Councillor Tomlin? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much for your contribution. Questions for officers. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions. Firstly, I assume now we've got an extant planning permission in front, which we can take into account when we're judging this one. And secondly, on the plan on page 208, there are 2 paved footpaths shown between the boundaries and the outer walls of the bungalow. Could I have some idea of how wide those footways are, please?
Thank you. Yes, the first application is a material consideration. It has planning permission, and the footpath to the side of each of the properties measures one metre, or 900 to a metre.
900.
Well, depending on obviously scaling of this plan,
Okay.
but so we were
Give
in
or
that
take.
range.
And Councillor Miller, did I see your hand raised?
Yes, you did, Chair. I'm going to ask the obvious one now. What else is incorrect on these drawings? We've got drawings in front of us which we're meant to assume are accurate. What the officer just told us and what we heard from the applicant contradict that. I'm sorry, but I've got to ask the question. Are these drawings accurate? And who is meant to be the authority for them? I know they're submitted by the agent, applicant, whatever, but what are we to believe in this particular assessment tonight?
So I would point to the proposal section of the report where I have set out the dimensions of the property. So the drawings which have been scaled off measures as 13 metres as the applicant stated. So they're the dimensions in my report are the scale of the scale drawing. So
Chair, I have to ask, we've now been told that tonight. We weren't told that when we scrutinised this report prior to coming to this meeting. What else is there that we're meant to scrutinise and what to believe if we've got 2 different pieces of data?
The report sets out the dimensions, so the 2 go together. You had the opportunity to read the report, which clarifies the size of the dwelling, and obviously you have the drawings as well. So the officer's information is what you should be basing your decision on.
Councillor Durrant, I think you had your...
I'm sorry, Chair, I haven't had an answer to my question. That it's been pointed out there are two definitions of the width. Which one were we to believe when we read the report?
Thank you, Councillor. So as Luke says, it's the report sets out it's 13 metres. That is the scale that's been taken. The incorrect part is on the submission plan, which says 15 metres across, but it is 13 metres. So it is a 1 metre width of pathway either side. So that is the basis on which to read. There's no.
Means like
Yeah, I think the intention I suspect is that the plan was to show that 15 metres was across the plot. It's simply that the line is finished in the wrong place. In terms of any other errors, there are none that we're aware of in terms of this application.
Councillor Durrant.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be a little bit pedantic here and just refer back to the previous application on page 165, where the officer talks about Sherfield Road being one of the main roads running through the village of Bramley. It's the only road running through Bramley. It's poorly maintained, it's narrow, and it's exceedingly busy. And I think if you take Councillor Fluke's point about there will be the movement of vehicles within the site and coming onto the C32, it's just important that you understand it's the one road we have, not one.
Is there a question in that statement?
Yes. Would you like to correct the impression that there is more than one road running through Bramley?
No, Councillor, I think the key point is that we've considered the impacts on access. I take the point that in terms of how how it's been described, but we understand the nature of the road when we've assessed the application.
Okay, I don't think there's any more questions, so we'll move to debate. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we're in a very different position from the previous one because we now have an extent planning permission to the front of this, which we can take into account. And I think what's gone on with this, if you look at it, it's tried to mirror the Marguerite Close development. In a lot of ways it does, but it's trying to do it in half the plot width. And the development, as it showed, it fills the plot pretty well side to side, apart from two very narrow alleyways. The windows and doors on the sides of the property open onto fences, and that's going to block the light into those rooms, which means they're going to have lights on, which means they're not going to be power friendly. You've also got a very narrow, poor access past the new house that we've just approved. And I must admit, when I stood on the site and I looked at the plans, I really could not believe that anybody was trying to shoehorn two bungalows side by side in a plot that narrow. I'm not convinced it's overdevelopment itself, because actually, if you look at the Marguerite Close site, whilst it's wider, you haven't got the length there. But what I am convinced is it's a cramped form of development. It's out of keeping with the rest of the local housing. And I move for refusal on the grounds that it is a cramped form of development and it's of bad design. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Durrant.
Thank you, Chair, again. I just wanted to make the point in Bramley there. We have 12 bungalows under construction in Bramley, just the other side of the railway line. So we don't have a shortage of this type of housing. We've actually taken, in terms of built, approved, and partially built, nearly 500 houses in Bramley versus the 200 in the current local plan. So we are most definitely not having a local need for more housing of this nature. And if I may, I would like to second the motion to refuse.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bound.
Yeah, I was going to second it, but I'm in total agreement in what Councillor Robinson has said. I think it is overdevelopment. It's overdevelopment of the width, at least, even if it's not of the whole site, because the garden is particularly long. And I was particularly interested in what the ward councillor was saying in terms of the windows, which are facing fences, and I would think would provide very, very little light into those bedrooms. So I'm against this application.
Okay, so we have a motion for refusal. Can we just clarify the reasons for refusal? Yeah.
It's a cramped form of development and it's of poor design and out of keeping with the local density.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson, for clarifying. Can I just understand it a little bit further in terms of, so cramped form development is about the width of the plots, it's not overdevelopment in terms of the amount of land, which I appreciate two separate things. You mentioned about the design, and just picking up the point that was made in debate around the windows. Is that part of your consideration, the fact that you've got windows facing onto fences in terms of amenity as being symptomatic of the of the poor design in your view?
Yes. Two reasons for refusal. Having a window facing a 6-foot fence is not good design.
So it's two separate reasons for refusal, one about that and one about the cramped nature of the... Yeah, that's fine.
Right, we have a live motion in front of us. We'll now move to vote. Those in favour of the motion for refusal, please show. That's pretty much right. Wow. Who am I to argue? Okay, if we could have the decision confirmed, please.
I can confirm that the application has been refused on cramped form development and poor design, with a second reason refusal relating to amenity impact on bedroom number 1.
Thank you very much. Right, last item, number 8, site adjacent to Summerfield Hat Common in East Woody. If we could have the officer introduction, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a technical detailed consent application for the erection of a single dwelling, associated outbuildings, access and landscaping. It follows the approval of permission in principle under application 2101271 PIP. The permission in principle established the principle of a dwelling in this location, and this cannot be reopened at this technical detail stage consent. We are looking at the matters of detail as submitted, not the principle. The proposed dwelling will be 2-storey and constructed with white render, timber cladding, grey roof tiles and solar panels, would be positioned on all roof slopes. Access is to be taken from Hat Common. You'll note from the update paper that since the publication of the main report, the agent has advised that the applicant's name was incorrectly placed on the application form. That's therefore been amended to redact that. And confirmation the applicant is Mr M Taylor. Also a revised location plan with an updated red line to align with that submitted and approved under the PIP application has been submitted. We've also had comments from the landscape officer, which is set out there, and as a result of that, the condition 4 proposed in relation to landscaping has been bolstered to include further elements in terms of planting sizes, species. The application is for approval with 2 amendments to conditions number 1, which is the plans, so that's to account for the updated red line plans, and number 4 in landscaping.
Thank you very much. We have Parish Council Representative Rose Donoghue, if you'd like to approach. Benches on your right to the front.
Chair, before I commence, would it be possible just to distribute
Afraid not. You're welcome to speak, but we won't have photographs. No, I'm sorry. Them's the rules, I'm afraid. Okay. But please take a seat, and when you're ready, you've got 4 minutes. If you push the mic button.
Well, I'll start then. The issue is specifically about design, which at one level is subjective, but there are clear guidelines to assist, which have not been considered. And I'd like to draw your attention to the following. The debate is about the detail which constitutes good design within East Woodhay, and where there is guidance on design. The planning officer has addressed all relevant points, about size, boundary, access, etc. But the detail of what is to be used to build this house has been overlooked, and as far as we're concerned, it's crucial. The planning officer is of one view. The local residents and parish councillors, supported by our councillors, is a more representative view. We all seem to be saying, sure, it's okay to build a house, but not in those materials and to that design. Our understanding is that this proposal originates from Poland. The design may well suit Polish architecture, but that does not mean it can be simply dropped into the English countryside with success. In respect to our objections, I want to refer the committee to the village design statement, which is referenced in the neighbourhood plan, and I want to refer to specific paragraphs of that statement. First paragraph is 047, which states development should take into account the visual impact in relation to the size, height and positioning of the plot and the neighbouring building. The visual impact of this bright white, very flat-fronted building with grey roof tiles and solar panels on all sides of the roof does not sit well within the location. Paragraph 052, new development should utilise building elements characteristic of the area and materials, but avoid a cocktail of features. The development does not reflect building elements characteristic of the area. The traditional building of the area have interesting brick features, not bright white render. The buildings have interesting and gabled roofs in mellow red tiles, not one big flat roof in grey. The buildings include tiles hanging across the whole of the building, not some inset decorative bit of wood. Paragraph 059 of the village design statement states that wall material type and colour should be sympathetic and match commonly used existing materials such as red brick and hung tiles. Clearly, this design does not match commonly used existing materials such as red brick and hung tiles and is not sympathetic. Paragraph 1 minute 006, roof material should match commonly used existing materials, and this design does not do so. And I'd like to just set out our reasons, our objections. The application does not conform to NP policy 101, good quality design. The application does not conform to local plan policy EM10, delivering high quality development. Policy EM10 states the proposal should promote the efficient use of land and achieve appropriate housing densities which respond to the local context as informed by the community documents. Policy EM10 states that development should take into account all relevant SPDs and community documents that identify the local character and distinctiveness of the area, which is valued by local communities. The proposal is not visually attractive.
If you could sum up.
Yes, I can sum up. So the external finishing materials and details are very important from an urban design perspective, but these must be high quality, reinforce the overall design concept and take into account the context of the site. They are our objections.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillors, do we have any questions for Parish Council representative? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much for your contribution. And speaking in objection, Jamie Kiffin-Top, if you'd like to approach. Welcome to Development Control. When you press the button on the right, if you're ready, you have 4 minutes.
Good evening. As a neighbour of the surrounding land to this agricultural plot, I wish to object to this application and for those others that have also objected at both PIP and TDC stage. Firstly, design. The site may have PIP, but the design needs to be acceptable in its context to convert this into planning permission. I've taken the time to commission and submit professional scrutiny of the design by a local architect consultant, but this merited and relevant document has been given cursory attention in the officer's report. As set out in submitted comments, the scale, bulk, mass, depth, and architectural approach to this dwelling is objectionable, and the majority of these points are initially and clearly conceded in the officer's report. Throughout the report, there is very little coverage of the numerous local objections and does not give wider reference and consideration to these. Despite the notes on the PIP asking for a design and access statement, this does not appear to have been submitted, which indicates that design has not been approached in a sympathetic, well-considered way, and therefore the officer's assessment of the design approach is lacking for not insisting on this, leading to an unsuccessful design for this special rural location in a protected and national landscape. Of concern, in reality, the design can realistically be used as an 8-bedroom property. The report compares the design to the neighbouring property, but we would stress that the neighbouring property is not an ill-placed European kit house. We share the concerns of the Parish Council that this is not an appropriate design for this sensitive rural location, failing to respect local character as well as harm it, setting an unhelpful precedent for poor quality and design within the area. Biodiversity. The officer's report makes no material mention of the stripping of the land to remove significant habitats that were in existence prior to the commissioned walkover and have since started to return over the last 2 years since this was actually completed. Therefore, the assumption that the BEMP condition is met by this report is contested. Landscape. The public right-of-way to the south stands testament to a busy and well-loved public amenity. The report's conclusions of no impact to this vista are completely refuted. With every surface of the roof covered in solar panels, reflection and glare are but one of many obvious detriments to this beautiful and rural walk. The Council's landscaping team recently objected to the revised landscaping plan and highlights that the applicant has removed a number of trees already in order to facilitate the placing of this large property on a tight building site and further supports the staging of the land. In conclusion, we are very surprised that this design has been recommended to the committee for approval and would respectfully request that this application should not be granted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions, councillors? I take it not. Thank you for your contribution, Mr. Kiffintop. And speaking in... No, it's all right. We don't have any questions for you. Speaking in support, Mike Cole as agent and Mr. Taylor as applicant, if you'd like to approach. Welcome to Development Control. When you're ready, you have 4 minutes between you. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chairman. Good evening, members, again. We fully endorse the officer's report, which considers the issues raised by the objectors and justifies the recommendation for approval based on the development plan. By way of background, on the 17th of May 2021, Mr. Taylor received the grant of permission in principle for a single dwelling house on this site. Later in June 2022, pre-application discussions were entered into with your officers to obtain feedback prior to submission. Following such discussions, detailed elevational design changes were made. There was, however, no requirement of your officers to amend the location, scale or mass which mirrors that for consideration this evening, as it was found acceptable in this regard, subject to the landscaping details which have been provided as part of this submission. During the course of this application, we have responded to consultee comments which resulted in the provision of additional information and amendments in the form of an automatic traffic count, surveys, amendments to the access and visibility space, ecological enhancements through a revised landscaping strategy, which also bolstered the structural landscape to the boundaries of the site and removal of the wind turbine from the drawings as requested by the Parish Council. The Highways Officer and Biodiversity Officer has, as a result, raised no objection. The applicant is committed to delivering a landscaping strategy and ecology enhancement plan. At present, this provides for 212 metres of additional hedgerow, 14 new trees, wildflower long-grassed areas, bird and bat boxes and log piles. We note the recent comments of the landscape officers, and the applicant is accepting of the proposed condition to provide further landscaping details. We also appreciate there are concerns about the design and scale. However, contrary to the Parish Council's comments, the neighbourhood plan, design policies and the village design statement are referred to on a number of occasions in the planning statement, and prior to input from your officers was also sought. A revision has also been made to reduce the roof height as demonstrated in the street scene study provided. The property now stands at 8.7 metres at its highest point, which is 0.75 metres lower than Summerfield, which is the adjacent property, and stepping down to 7.6 metres over the garage. It is pertinent to note that the property known as Conifers within the same linear development is 2.5 stories in height, permitted at 9.5 metres high and 13 to 16 metres in depth. We concur therefore with the officers that the proposed development is comparable to the scale, bulk and massing of neighbouring properties. The plot sizes along this road are generous in width, and the proposed plot size would be similar to the surrounding plot sizes. The proposed dwelling retains a large distance from the side boundaries with a minimum of 5 metres. It will be located 21 metres back from the highway, in line with the majority of the other dwellings located along the linear row of houses. The width of the plot is also commensurate. Width of the property is also commensurate at 25.5 metres compared to Summerfield, which is 29 metres in width. There is no set character to the residential dwellings within the locality, nor any listed or notable buildings within close proximity. The proposed dwelling is of a design vernacular similar to the neighbouring dwelling at Summerfield, which also comprises white render and timber cladding deemed acceptable to the local authority only 6 years ago, integrating therefore into the character of the street scene, I think as shown in photograph B of the presentation. Within the village design statement, under paragraph 52, it notes that the use of more modern materials and features is stated as acceptable if sited away from historic properties such as this. Material details are, however, to be secured by condition. The proposal is a bespoke design tailored to the site that has been moulded through discussions with officers and changed during the course of the application, and also meets the needs of the applicant for a multi-generational house built around energy efficiency and quality. We hope that members agree to the recommendations within the approval set out within the committee report. Mr. Taylor and I are here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Cole and Mr. Taylor? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. Fairly simple question. Did you consult with the Parish Council over this development, bearing in mind we read the report and a very extensive comment by the Parish Council is included, and I just would like to know the answers to that one.
We did not consult with the parish directly, no, but we did say we had lengthy engagements with the local authority.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for your contribution. Right, don't have any local councillors speak, therefore anyone have questions for officers? Councillor Faulkner?
Yeah, just clarification. I noticed the PIP was 2021. What is the timescale for when PIPs lapse?
Yeah, this PIP has a 3-year timescale, so it would run until the 16th of May this year.
No more questions? Councillor Miller.
Yes, really referring back to the Parish Council comments on design. I can remember some years ago when I was involved in, we were consulting on the new design statement for this council, and design of houses were very appropriate to be included within that, and it seems to be did you have access to the comments from the parish council and their various comments from their neighbourhood plan? Because it seems to be quite in depth, and this just doesn't seem to fit in, notwithstanding the comments by the applicant that it is similar to Summerfields next door. But Eastwood, to my knowledge, I've been through there several times, is traditional brick properties around the place, and whether that was considered by officers.
Thank you, Councillor Melly. Yes, obviously all representations made are taken into consideration by officers, and clearly the parish council comments would have been received at an early stage, and officers would have taken that into their assessment. Clearly, this particular section of East Woody, that run, there's no particular one style, uniform style or design. Obviously, you've heard from the applicant about taking cues, and also the officers' report. Some cues have been taken from the Summerfield in terms of some of the materials being similar to, and officers feel that this design is appropriate on this occasion. Clearly, we have a different view from that of the parish council.
Okay, debate. Do we have anyone wishing to move? Councillor Robertson.
Nobody else seems to be putting their hand up. Personally, I don't like the design, but design is subjective, and I really cannot see any reason to refuse it that would stand up to appeal. So I move the officer recommendation.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bound.
Yeah, I'm not that keen. That would certainly help in terms of energy saving, I presume. So I can't see any reason to refuse it, so I will back Councillor Robinson in seconding it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have a burning desire to speak before we go to vote? I see no hands raised at that point. Okay, we'll move to those in favour of the application, the proposal, please show. One, two, three. Okay, those against, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that falls. Right, do we have a mover for an alternative to refuse the application with reasons for refusal, please? Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the design and how it relates to the surrounding properties, I do feel it has flaws in it. The idea that every piece of rooftop has to have a solar panel, of course we accept Councillor Tomlin's point that we do need to do more for our green credentials, but I do not believe it fits both with the East Woody design neighbourhood plan and our design of sustainability and our planning documents. So I really would like a refusal on this. Perhaps they come back with a scheme that's less impactful.
Okay, so you're refusing on the grounds of what scale of development, visual impact?
Visual impact, scale, and the design is outside the surrounding areas.
Right, okay.
Neighbourhood plan.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Rattigan, can I just seek a little bit more guidance in terms of on the design point? Is it around the use of materials specifically? Is it to do with the Councillor Bound mentioned the fenestration? Is it a combination of all those factors as to differentiating from the surrounding character of the area?
I think the scenic quality of the surrounding area is important. The fact that it will be slightly carbuncle within the East Woody area because it is so different, and and the materials that are being used and the scale of some of the features, I don't think fit in with the East Woody neighbourhood plan.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Miller. Motion proposed and seconded for refusal. All those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against, please show. 1, 2, 3. And abstentions, me. I think that's a decision. Can we have that confirmed, please?
Yep, thank you, Chair. The application's been refused on the basis of design, visual impact, scale, out of keeping with the area, and materials being incongruous within the compared to the surrounding character of the area.
Right, thank you very much. That being no further business, I propose we close the meeting at 8:45. Thank you everyone for your attendance.